Aaron Torres joining us from the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast and Aaron Torres Media. And hey, AT, good to have you on as always. I enjoyed the Super Regional pod we did on your podcast a couple days ago. I hope we're going to do another one to preview the College World Series next week.
Well, let me ask you this, because I was thinking about it this morning. Obviously, you and I talked about it, and I encourage people to check that out. Apple, Spotify, wherever, YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. Whenever there's an intriguing, matchup in the NCAA basketball tournament, the default always becomes, the committee wanted it that way, and, the TV partners wanted it that way. And I'm just curious, from your guys' perspective, and then also just from the fans' perspective, when the bracket came out and we saw that this matchup could happen in the Super Regionals, did it immediately default to, somebody wanted to set up a marquee matchup on that second weekend, or was this kind of, you never know what the bracket's going to look like before it comes out, but based on the regular seasons that these two teams had, was that something that could have conceivably been predicted before the bracket came out?
Yeah, I didn't think it had anything to do with the TV ratings. I just expected Arkansas to be lined up against either Ole Miss or Tennessee for the Super Regional, just because of the way that both those teams finished the season. And it has absolutely nothing to do with talent level, because I think if you're looking at talent level, these probably are the two most talented teams in the country, just top to bottom. It's not the kind of matchup
or all season long.
Yeah, well, it's not the kind of. It doesn't mean that Tennessee had the kind of regular season that puts them in position to host a Super Regional. Unfortunately for them, but it's just amazing high-end talent. It'll also play itself out, Aaron, once the draft comes, because in a month or a little more than a month, when the Major League Baseball draft comes, there's going to be 6 to 7, if not more, players picked off of each of these teams, and that's why pro scouts are drooling over this. I mean, they'd watch it because it'd be a good series, but this has got future major leaguers all over it.
So when you said the two most, is that the two most talented teams left of the 16, or are you saying that on paper you could have made the argument that back in February when the season started, these are the two most talented teams in the series?
I think on paper you could have said that at the start of the season, and even by the end of the season too. It's just so when it comes to talent, and I get that this has to also translate to all the other sports. Talent doesn't also always mean refinement, and I think Tennessee is refined in some ways in terms of hitting and some of their pitchers, but they're not as refined in the field. And that's been the biggest separator between that. And I don't know. I just expect that to play itself out. But I needed to ask you a question here as somebody that you joke about this sometimes. Is I think you really do appreciate college baseball and the excitement of this time of the year. There's Tennessee fans and Twitter accounts that are trying to make a case that college baseball needed the injection of whatever it is that Tennessee brought to the sport. So as somebody who I think is kind of new to the excitement of college baseball, how do you view that opinion?
I don't know if it's going to upset anybody in Fayetteville, but I think that it's been good for the sport overall. I said last year when Tennessee won its first championship, I said, and I thought this even before he won it, but I said Tony Vitello is college baseball Dan Hurley. In other words, great, young on the younger side. We hope to have him in our sport for the next 15, 20 years. But, when his teams play, you're going to watch, and, they might do some things. In the case of UConn, I think it's more the coaching staff more than the players. Like, I don't think UConn players do anything crazy, but Dan Hurley does stuff crazy on the sidelines. But you watch because you either love them or you hate them. But I think Tennessee is the closest thing that college baseball has to that. And so I don't know if college baseball needs it, but I think any sport, I think personality is good, and I think personality and storylines, and if you know the narrative a little bit, I think it brings in casual fans. I mean, I don't mean to get sidetracked here, but look at what's going on in the NBA Finals right now. We're struggling to find ways to talk about this matchup because nobody knows anything about OKC, respectfully. I mean, people know, but you know what I'm saying. And, until 2 weeks ago, I think Tyrese Halliburton was just the dude that was on the Olympic team that was kind of the water boy on the Olympic team, for lack of a better term, last year. And I don't think anybody really knew anything about him. And so to circle back to college baseball, I think it's a net positive when you have people that care. And I think as long as they're not doing anything malicious, I mean, you don't know about them because their players are sliding spikes up or their pitchers are throwing balls at guys' heads, I think it's a net positive. So, again, I don't know if it makes me unpopular in Fayetteville, and I know that Dave Van Horn certainly runs his program in a much different way, but I do think it is a net positive for college baseball overall.
I think it's an interesting opinion for the idea, because we look at it from the granular perspective, from being here on location in Fayetteville. And Arkansas baseball has been a very, very popular thing for a long time now. And it's really been supercharged, I think, in the last probably 15 years. But it's been really popular. SEC baseball has been very popular, too. But I can see your point that if you're going to attract a national audience, and I think that's where college baseball has struggled, because it's been a regional sport, well, there's got to be some kind of flashpoint. Tennessee is a little bit of that flashpoint.
No doubt. And again, it's just, I just think that, I just think that it's, like you said, is that, and I don't know, it's funny because this is a conversation that's going on with the NBA playoffs right now. It's like, should we care about the ratings if they're lower, or should we just appreciate really good basketball?
Yeah.
And I think, again, to college baseball diehards, they don't really care if, they just want to see the best teams and the best this and the best that. I think I have a little bit of that during college basketball season where, everybody wants, give me the upset. It's like, or give me chaos. I'm like, I don't want chaos. Like, I want, Florida versus Auburn. I want, Houston in the Final Four. I want Duke in the Final Four. And so I think there's two different things. If I can use a quick random analogy, I'll give you one. I was on TechSags yesterday, and we were talking a little bit about Arch Manning. And I said, I feel like Arch Manning's maybe a little bit overrated going into the year. And David Nunio, who hosts TechSag, said, well, yeah, but Texas can win a national championship even if he isn't great. And I said, yeah, but there's the college football fan that's looking at it from the college football perspective of, well, how does Texas match up in the bigger picture with Oregon and Ohio State and whatever? But then there's the Sunday guy that's coming in to watch college football that thinks Arch Manning is just going to be an extension of Peyton and Eli and is going to dominate college football and go number one overall in the draft. And so to circle it back to college baseball, I think there's some of that as well of, if you love the sport, if you love the team, or you love your individual team, it doesn't just have to be Arkansas, LSU, Tennessee, whoever cares about college baseball, I don't think you're worried about, hey, is there a team that's attracting a broader audience? It's just, hey, my team's awesome, I love this sport. But I do think, listen, I think as the Tennessee story gets told and retold, and, they're going to continue to have success, obviously, coming off that first national championship a year ago, I just think, familiarity is a good thing for any sport, and I think it's only going to help college baseball going forward.
Yeah, I wonder. So I hate the idea that the conversation is always driven by ratings, because ratings are going to be dictated by the size of a fan base of teams that are in those championships in a lot of cases. And it's like I'm a Pittsburgh Pirates fan. There's nobody that is a fan of a small market team in Major League Baseball that feels that they're going to have a chance. It's a good thing when small market teams like Oklahoma City and Indianapolis, compared to the other markets that they play in, especially in that league, to feel that, look, it doesn't just have to be L.A. It doesn't just have to be San Francisco, New York, Boston. It can be the smaller markets. Look what happened in San Antonio. Portland fans have got to be looking at this saying, when is this going to be our chance? And we were talking about one-team towns, and they have to feel like they've got a chance, and they're not just some farm team for the big teams. And that's why I never like the ratings aspect to why.
No, I agree.
But this super regional is going to be nothing but great ratings. I don't know what the NBA Finals is going to be. It probably won't be great ratings, but that also doesn't mean that, let's say, one of these teams gets something going, right? I mean, eventually, once the Spurs turned into the dynasty that they were, people wanted to watch them.
Zero doubt. Yeah, zero doubt. And again, I think from the college baseball perspective, I do think it is familiarity, which I think is just a net positive for the longer Tennessee is elite, the better they're going to be going forward. Listen, how about this, Phil? The fact that we have spent, 7, 8, 9, 10 minutes just talking about is Tennessee good or bad for college baseball means that they're good for college baseball. Respectfully, we wouldn't have this conversation about LSU. Maybe we would about Texas because Schloss certainly seems to, march to the beat of his own drum. But, outside of Schloss last year, and I think to a degree Tony Vitello is turning into that, there's not a lot of national stories. So I think it's a net positive. And, the NBA stuff is completely different. I just think the NBA stuff is interesting because, you can say, I shouldn't care about the ratings, but what I just find interesting about the NBA is they have gone so hard and so heavy trying to just kind of continue to hold on to this LeBron James, Steph Curry era. That era is over. And I think the NBA is going to reap a little bit of punishment for that when the ratings come out for this game. But I think, if you're a basketball fan, I don't know how you don't love OKC and Indy. I don't know how you don't appreciate Tyrese Halliburton and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander because they're really good basketball players. They're really good teams. And in basketball, they're deserving of being in that spot.
BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. With baseball season in full swing, BetOnline has more ways to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news, scores, and even live in-game betting while the games are being played. We keep the dog days of summer rolling with the largest selection of odds on everything. With updated odds on the MLB, UFC, and boxing to tennis and NFL futures, BetOnline remains the best online source for all your sports wagering information. In between games, head over to the BetOnline Casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker and live casino. BetOnline. The game starts here.